Okay, this is a video for the new Truthears HEXA. It's a hybrid, it's a single dynamic, 2 balanced armature set, I believe. Same company that made its grand debut with the critical release, which is called the Zero, which I still consider to be one of the better releases of 2022 in price to performance, ingenuity with the 2 DDs, the very well crossed over dedicated subwoofer, little tight for me, but I can adjust that. I thought that's absolutely brilliant. I wreck it all the time. This is a little bit different, and I think this is aimed at a different audience, and I'm going to let a guy on Reddit actually explain it better. So let me tip my head back. Somebody put up a graph of Super's graph compared to the Moondrop Blessing 2, and Buick 6 New York said, if this could beat the Blessing 2 for $100, I'm in. And then the guy below him said, I don't think that's possible. The B2 already cheap for what they pack. I think Buick 6 New York actually pretty closely nailed this, because I think that the tuning and the overall sound quality is not very different from the Blessing 2. And I think that the audience is the same. I think that the tuning kind of bears that out. Do you need to pay the extra money for the Blessing 2? Or are companies kind of porting the tech to lower brackets to get more volumes in sales? Margins are smaller, but you kind of make that up in volume. I think that's what's going on, and it's been going on in the hobby for a couple months, going back a half a year now. If you are a Moondrop Blessing 2 fan, not the Dusk so much, but the original one, this is something you should really keep your eyes out on. If not, just go ahead and pull the trigger. It is actually really good. If you're a fan of the Zero, this would be something that you should pause and slow down a little bit, wait for more feedback, because I don't think it's really aimed at that crowd. I'm going to unbox this now, and then I'll show you frequency graph after. I'm going to fast forward through this so you don't have to put up with the painful slog that unboxing is, but I do want to show what's inside, starting now. Okay, looking at the shells, you can see, let me go ahead and flip one of these up. It is, it's very similar to the Zero in the sense that it's got the kind of opaque, smoky, black shell, which I really love because it's not clear, like you can see everything, but you can make it out. I can see the top of the driver on this one. I can see the tubes for the BAs through it, so I really do like the image. You can see the 3 tuning holes at the top with the dampening. I can see green and yellow inside there. Fit is good on this set. I don't have any issue with that. It fits nicely. It's got there's no lip on that, so if tips come off easily, consider that. I didn't measure this, so I don't know what it is, but there is no lip on the edge of these. So that's what these look like up close. I think they look actually quite nice. They remind me kind of the soft ears volume a little bit. Not really in color, but kind of, there's something about it that reminds me of these. So that's what they look like up close. Cable is essentially, it's identical to the one that comes with the Zero, which if you've seen my videos recently, that cable, this one from the Zero, is this cable that I use for my 6-way splitter as my first option, because it's a 2-pin, it's really easy to manage, does its job, which is to not fail. So I'm a fan of this, especially in the price range of $50, $70, $80. I think this is a really good stock cable. It also comes with tips, pair of foams, and then small, medium, large of wide bore and narrow bore tips, and I believe that's the same that came with the Zero. So let me go ahead and repack this up very quickly. Okay, let's talk about some music. Before we do that, let's take a look at the frequency graph on the left. You can see that it is a sub bass over mid bass. It's got a very slight and subtle glide. It's got obviously very clean mids. It's got a very subdued gain, and it peaks at 3K. It's got a fall off between 3K and about 7 kilohertz, a little divot there, and then it falls off at 8K. Catches itself at 15K. There's a lot of sets that have a profile in the treble that are similar to this set. I'm assuming that the BAs are handling that region for sure, and the dynamic driver is taking care of the sub bass to mid bass, at least maybe slightly beyond. So that's what the graph looks like. The sound, the bass, you can definitely pick up in that sense. Talking about bass, let's start in the sub bass using something that's like Roland 808 or Deck Mixed beats, something like Pack Like Sardines in a Crushed Tin Box, Tupac Violent, Kill Jill by Big Boy. The drops that are within those 3 tracks that I just mentioned are not substantial. They're not very heavy really at all. This is not a set that is aimed for people that have a library that is really similar to mine. This is definitely aimed at people who really like the Blessing 2. And I'm thinking that this is maybe K-pop, J-pop, vocal-centric type of stuff, because the beats are... Here's the thing. I'm going to talk about... I'll talk about this first. The deck mix drops are audibly lacking to me, and they sound slightly unnatural. As we get to bass guitar, let's get to bass guitar. Bass guitar is different. The EX1000 and a lot of sets that I loved years ago and still do to some extent, when you have a profile in the sub bass, mid bass that is fairly steady and even, bass guitar, depending on how it's produced, like the specific track and album and producer, it doesn't sound wrong. It can sound slightly back. I think tremendously boosted sub bass with a cut in the mid bass, like the Monarch original, and that will impact the quality and what sounds like a realistic replay more than like this will. This actually sounds fine. So listening to Sultans of Swing, Black Sabbath Sweet Leaf, which is right here, A Violent Femmes, Please Do Not Go, I thought the bass guitar was fine. It doesn't have the slaps and the snappy pulls and releases on the chords that I kind of like, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So this might be fine for you. If you have like a rock-based library and you listen to a lot of bass guitars and you expect that to be done in a certain way. Drums as well, as we move to drums. I thought the drums sounded fine, slightly polite. The only time when I can pick up that there's an issue is that the kick drum sounds, instead of authoritative on the fourth album by Led Zeppelin, sounds like a regular kick drum. And again, if we go to tuning like the Monarch original and the variations where you pull in that mid bass relative to the sub bass that precedes it, that's an obviously neutered replay of the kick drum. This is slightly different. This is non-ideal, this Hexa, but I prefer it over that tuck tuning. So for bass guitar, not a problem. If you want the heavy hits on, EDM, trip hop, stuff like that, this wouldn't be the set. I think you could gather that by looking at a graph. Moving into vocals, which I think is where this probably shines, as the original Blessing 2, listening to stuff like Fleetwood Mac, Chris Cornell, ELO, Mr. Blue Sky. I think that female and male vocals actually do quite well on this. When I first got this, I was imagining that this was for some reason I thought this was the Project Red by Critical. And when I listened to it, I was very, not let down, but the Zero was so impressive to me that I thought, oh, wow. Then I kind of looked at the graph and figured this isn't that project. And the more that I listened to my library, which outside of classical is all vocals, the vocals is and everything, I really found myself enjoying the replay of the vocals. I thought there's a sweetness to Stevie Nicks on the Chain, Gold Dust Women. I thought sounded really, really nice. So when I stopped thinking about what I thought this was going to be and started thinking about what it is, I was enjoying it a lot more, which is really what we should all do, but we're not robots here. So I think it does really good for vocals. I think the cymbal strikes, which I didn't mention in the drum part, actually sound fine. They sound energetic. They don't sound muted, like the drummer's reaching out and muting it with his hand, even though that's not what's happening. This does sound normal. This does sound like it has proper energy. A lot of people cite things that fall off at 8K and say, oh, something's going to be lacking. If you make note of 10K to about 13K, you'll notice that it's just about 5 dB lower than the whole of the mids. It's not really that de-emphasized, and it's not abnormal. And by the way, decay of a sound of any kind, whether it's my knuckle against the table or anything, has a peak and then it falls away. So it's kind of how sound is normally represented, and also your ears' efficiency at that range is questionable. So I think that cymbals and stuff with upper harmonics, and maybe that's why vocals sound so good, because it sounds tuned very well there. If we get to strings, something like Vivaldi, I think that this does quite well there as well. Again, when I do my listening evaluations, I start with the chart on the left and I start with the bass. So a set like this is obviously going to be like, oh wow, you know, where's my drops? And then you get into other stuff, and by the time I get into the vocals, I'm already pretty much solid with how I feel, regardless of how the bass is, how it relates to it. Violins in Vivaldi, Concerto number 1 in E major, brilliant. Sounds very good. That fall after 8K, but not too far away, gives a natural decay to the violin. The string section in an orchestra, which I've said in recent videos, it can be quite intense. If you're a classical, you listen to a lot of classical, you know that you listen to speakers in a house would be ideal for that, to give you some distance from your ears. With headphones and particularly IEM, some classical passages with a lot of brass, woodwinds, and strings can really, really get on you quickly, to the point of maybe ringing your ears a little bit. This didn't do that. I'll let this go at that. I think that for people like the Blessing 2, I think that if you think that more affordable sets can't get you the same quality as slightly more expensive set, I think that that's not the hobby in 2022 or 2023 as it comes in. They're going for collaborations. They're going for volume of sales, and the margins are tighter, but they can make that up in overall volume. So it's a calculation move. So is the Hexa obviously inferior to the B2 because it's more affordable than the B2? I would not agree with that statement at all. I think you ought to get your ears on this and listen to people that are fans of the B2 and how they say this relates to that set. So I think that there's a big market for this set. It's probably not my crowd, but again, that's a testament to Shenzhen and their willingness to send stuff to people that aren't on their team or on board. It's a very solid company. This will be, I believe, sold exclusively from Shenzhen, like the Zero. So when that link comes up, I'll go ahead and add it to this video. Okay, that's it, and I'm out.